Hi, I'm Nicole.
And I'm Steph.
Welcome back to the Ego Drop, where we'll be discussing all things ego. And this week's focus is ego and the entrepreneur. This is a little something about that we both know something about. But before we get into it, how has your ego been impacted this week, Steph?
Well, as usual, it's probably related to my self-confidence and sort of inferiority sort of feelings. So I was asked to do something at work where I had to give feedback to somebody more senior to me.
Mhm.
And it was to obviously help. It's like a second pair of eyes on a particular project. And I just, my instant reaction was, why have they asked me? This person is so much more senior to me. I don't feel comfortable giving that feedback. And I mean, these feelings don't last long. It's literally like a fleeting, oh, I feel awkward doing this. And, they're so much more superior than me. So I guess it's that feeling of inferiority, even if it only lasts for 5 minutes. And then I got on with the task and did it. So I think perhaps in a slightly negative manner this week.
So you
How
question
about
yourself for a bit, and then you question yourself and feeling a sense of you're not entitled to have an opinion
yeah,
or
I,
give feedback to
I,
that
I
other person.
definitely, and I think I do have that kind of response to most tasks in life where my instant reaction is, "What? Oh my god,
Is it, is
stop!"
it because you're not confrontational? Is that what it is?
Um, I don't know if it's even confrontational, really. It's just not wanting to criticize
Yeah. Yeah.
somebody else's work.
Yeah.
Even after all these years of management and things like that, I still don't always feel comfortable. I think he's probably more fitting than confident because I've got a lot of confidence generally, but I think, yeah, I don't always feel comfortable saying, oh, you need to perhaps amend that a little bit. Obviously, if it's something really important or something legally wrong or something like that, that's different.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's that sort of, yeah, feeling like somebody's more superior to me and therefore they should have the answers. So I guess it's my inferiority and then thinking that their ego makes them more superior. So yeah, that's how it's affected me, I'd say.
Mm.
How about you? How do you think ego's affected you for the last week or two?
Um, it my ego's impacted me in a way where I was questioning myself and being stubborn and um questioning my decision making skills and so on. As you know, I have some short-term let properties that are dealing, and I had two properties in Birmingham. Well, I have more than two in Birmingham, but two of them, they haven't been working, and the lease came to the end of, well, one of them came to the end of their life, and the other one, I was just umming and ahhing with whether or not I should continue, and
Mm.
it's I was at that place of, oh my, should I? And I was umming and ahhing with making the decision. I was sitting around, couldn't decide what to do. And so, and then I was thinking maybe I should continue to push on. Maybe I should try. Maybe let me figure out how I could navigate making it work. I was being trying to push on, trying to push myself to continue, even though it wasn't financially viable, it didn't make sense. And so when I sat down with my bookkeeper and we had punched the numbers, it just didn't make it, it probably could just about work, but not necessarily profitable. And so I was asking myself, why did I want to continue? Why am I pushing? Why did I insist on not sorry on not wanting to let go? You know what I mean? And just let them go, move on, end the lease and just move on. And I was asking myself, and I was feeling like a failure and
Mm.
giving up. And that's what I seem to have concluded in my head, that is a fear of failing. I don't failure. I don't want to just give up, just like that. And those are the things that I was asking myself, I was thinking and feeling at the time. And in the end, I concluded that I was talking to myself, because now one of the things that this podcast has also done for me, it's making me evaluate a lot more and reflecting a lot more. Whereas sometimes I will do something, I'll make decisions, and then I'll always reflect. I'm a very reflective person. I think I am.
You are.
I'll always reflect, but usually sometimes after the event. But what I'm doing now in real time, I find a lot of times I'm evaluating on the go, saying, how's my ego impacting me here? So the podcast is helping me in that.
I think that as well. I think it's helping me. So just on that point, I think when we first started all those weeks ago now, I think when we did the whole let's ask each other how it's impacted you. Certainly for the first one, I kind of struggled to think of ideas. Now it's more about narrowing them down because
Yeah,
again, reflecting
yeah,
most days on how ego has cropped up.
yeah.
And I think it may also have brought those moments of insecurity to a close quicker. So the example I gave a few moments ago, I might have waited a week procrastinating on that particular task because of feeling inferior. And even saying inferior makes me think, oh,
Even
um,
though you know you're not,
where,
but it's the feeling.
whereas
Yeah,
now it's a 5 minute panic initially, and then get over it because that's just your ego. This is your job. This is what you get paid for. Crack on.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so I would agree with that. That's really interesting. We haven't actually discussed that, have we? But
No, I haven't. But I find myself almost, constantly,
yeah,
evaluating the ego here. So it's amazing how
yeah.
this is actually working for me. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And I think people that have spoke to me about having listened to the podcast and guests that we are interviewing or proposing to interview, getting the same thing back from them. Oh, I hadn't really thought about my ego in that way before, and it's really interesting. It goes into every area of your life, so I think we've certainly opened a bit of a
But
Pandora's box here,
yeah,
maybe.
but it's amazing how it's helping us. And then of course, hopefully, others will express the same, too. But anyway, sorry, carry on.
No, that was it
So
really.
that's my bit really. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm so pleased today. We've got a really good guest to talk to today who is an entrepreneur. And obviously, that's what we're discussing today and how ego impacts being a business owner. And so, we've got a good friend coming on to help us with that particular topic in a little while. But before we introduce him, shall we try and explore ego in a bit more depth today?
Yeah, sure. Well, of course, one of the things that is the typical image of ego is a wealthy, successful, beautiful person who believes that they are better than others.
Mhm.
However, as we have discussed before on previous episode, that ego is our self-identity and who we think we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and so all of our anxieties and those insecurities, like what I was discussing
Exactly.
if you get your confidence and your self-esteem, or what makes you feel inferior or superior to others, that's all part of ego and therefore part of our identity.
Yeah, yeah. So we thought the entrepreneur would be a good topic really to explore, isn't it? And because of ego wants us to compare ourselves to others. Intuitively, that's what we do. And it's also about competition, isn't it? It's about
Mm,
doing better than the other person or being on top, that kind of thing. I think that's
yeah.
what it's about. So we look at the social situations and assess where we stand in comparison to others. It's just our innate nature, isn't it?
Yeah,
To
to make those comparisons.
person, yeah. Mm.
So some people do suggest that that's because it's part of our biological evolution in terms of hierarchy.
Mm.
So historically, hierarchy tended to be more important for survival many years ago. And so the powerful and the more important were always at the top, whilst the remainder struggled at the bottom. I mean, you could argue what has really changed in life. There's certainly hierarchies with the rich and powerful at the top and everyone else perhaps at the bottom. But yeah, I think that it has evolved to some extent.
Well, it's how much? What is when our egos are unhealthy, we think about, being tall, yeah,
Mhm.
beautiful, um, powerful, and successful persons as though when when we should aspire to and but that person is that person really truly happy with all of that, with all of the exteriors, with all of the, I mean, if you even think about into this the 2024, you think about, you know, um, all the stuff you could do to change yourself, your physical, does it
Or
make a
the
difference?
aesthetic.
Yeah, all the aesthetic that you could do and make yourself look this way. I mean, I was watching a program, a chap added, I can't remember how many inches. So he had a physical procedure to make himself taller. So but the question is, with all of that, you know, are you truly happy? And the funny thing is, he was saying how much he's an actor, and he was saying how, he was getting more, if you like, he felt he was being treated different in a positive way. And I was like, wow. So happiness is subjective, isn't it?
Do you mean height? Or am
Yeah.
I?
Yes, taller. He's taller. I forgot the program. I'll try and find it. But honestly, and if I find it, I'll read it. But he was interviewed, and he had a procedure whereby they literally made him taller, added.
My mind went somewhere else when you said, right.
Oh, I know, I know.
Oh,
Well, that's a procedure they've been doing for a long time. Come
when he
on.
said he was an actor, I was like, what, in a film? Oh
Well,
God.
well, I know. Come on, Steph.
But no, it is an interesting point, and it will be interesting when we speak to our guest shortly to know if even when you're at the top of your game in business, even when you are successful on paper, does that still make you happy or not?
Yeah.
So we'll find out a little bit about that, because I think self-awareness and balance is going to be important in your life, isn't it? And it's vital to notice when you're feeling in competition with others, or feeling perhaps as though you're slightly better than others, or maybe not good enough when you compare yourself with others, because both of those things can be signs of a fragile or maybe even an out of control ego.
Mm-hmm. Well, we should consider all these traits in relation to the entrepreneur. And I think let's take a short break, and then we can welcome today's guest. We can delve into these topics.
Definitely, and I'm going to go and lie down in a darkened room now. So welcome back to the Ego Drop for part 2 of episode 5, where we're looking at the ego versus entrepreneur. And I'm really happy to welcome fellow lawyer and entrepreneur Regan Peggs to the podcast. Hi, Regan.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm all right. Yeah, a bit nervous.
Oh, bless you. It's not like you.
Guess what? You're only talking to us right now, so it's fine.
Just us and, hopefully a few hundred other people.
Well, thank you for coming.
No, it's really nice to be here. I've really enjoyed. I've listened to 2 episodes so far. I think the only 2 you've released. I've really enjoyed them. So
probably at the time of recording, yeah. But by the time this goes out, hopefully there'll be a few others that you'll have listened to too.
I think this was. Did I read episode 5 or something?
It will be, yeah.
So Regan, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and why you are an entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, the first thing is I've never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I mean, I'm just a solicitor who has a business. So I was. It was interesting to think of things from that perspective. Entrepreneurs. You think of Richard Branson or Elon Musk or people like that. And I'm not wealthy. But I guess I started out in business because I was absolutely terrible at working for other people. I couldn't ever do as I was told. I hated turning up on time.
Hang on, let me put my surprised face on.
But it wasn't just that. It was there's lifestyle involved in working for yourself as well, as you both know. So I can my hours can work around me. My work can work around me to a large extent. And I also enjoy the challenge of running a business. On the whole, I mean, it has, there's good days and bad days, but there's an extra element of fun over and above what I do in the law to that, I guess. About me, yeah, I'm just a middle-aged bloke, qualified on exactly the same day as Steph. And
yeah, we were just remarking off camera that it will be 20 years this year since we qualified. So aside from the fact that deserves a very big drink, which we will be arranging, it's quite remarkable when you think about where on earth that time has gone.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the unique thing about my current setup is my business is in Birmingham, but I live at least 50% of the time in Shetland, and that's, that comes with challenges. So that's maybe something that feeds into some of the other things you're going to ask me later on.
And that's due to family, where your family lives currently, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. So my kids are in Shetland, so I spend as much time here as I can. Yeah.
It looks very, very beautiful looking at the photos that you often put up on the socials.
Yeah. Well, I don't take pictures of the rainy, grey days, but yeah, it is.
So how do you manage, if you don't mind me just prying a bit, maybe, timekeeping in terms of, because I know that was something you talked about with your very starting off the intro about working for others and timekeeping, etc. How do you manage, your practice in Birmingham and then, of course, going back and forth? I presume that's what you do. How do you manage that?
Well, what I tend to do is arrange my hearings. I try to get them listed in a block. So I've just flown back today. I literally got in the door 10 minutes ago.
Wow.
And so I had hearings. I flew down on Monday, had hearings and client meetings Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I've flown back this morning. And if I do that sort of twice a month, it kind of works. And the rest of it, of course, as we all learned during the pandemic, you can work from anywhere.
Yes.
So that was the realizing that you didn't actually have to schlep into a city centre office every day at 9 o'clock on the dot and leave at, I was going to say 5, but lawyers never leave at 5. But leave at whatever time, through all the commuter traffic and all the rest of it. Those days are kind of gone. So yeah.
So do you think you've managed to get a good work-life balance now?
Well, it's certainly better than it used to be. I mean, when I started out, it was, working for other people. I won't name names, but you were certainly when I first went into private practice, the two senior partners in that firm made it very clear that you would work very long hours indeed. Whereas these days, I still work long hours, but I guess I work the hours that I want to work.
Yeah, different, isn't it?
Exactly. So if it's a sunny day and I want to go off and have a bike ride or something, I can, and just pick up slack the next day.
Fab. So, of course, we focus largely on ego, hence the name of the podcast, and how it impacts our lives. Can you think of instances that you might want to share where ego has impacted your life?
Yeah, I can. Well, the first thing is, unless I've completely misunderstood the concept, it impacts on everything, right? So
that's what we're learning, definitely.
Yeah. So, but to be more kind of specific, like negative, I think I've certainly been flattered into taking on roles that I really didn't have time for previously. So sharing this or that, or taking on this or that extra activity. At one point, I was in a position where I was effectively running 2 businesses, basically because people had kind of flattered me into thinking that I should do it, and it was too much. Also, negatively, certainly I've been flattered into kind of taking risks in business that perhaps in hindsight I shouldn't have taken. people kind of egging me on and me thinking, oh yeah, I can do this. I'm the next big I am, or whatever. But in a positive way, a healthy ego point of view. I've had the self-awareness to now, at least, to recognise why I'm doing things, and also something that really has come just in the last year or so is having the self-awareness and the humility to ask other people for help.
Mm.
That's a really big thing to say, actually, I don't know how to solve this. Pick up the phone to someone who's got a good few more years under their belt and ask for their advice, which is something I wouldn't have done a few years ago anyway.
Do you think that's harder because you are an entrepreneur, a business owner, to actually ask for help because you're at the top of your firm and therefore you're the font of knowledge, at least on paper? Do you think that makes it hard, or is that just in your character not to want to ask for help?
It's probably both, I suppose. Definitely, I think our profession is one in which you try. Maybe it's different now, but certainly when we were all trained, I think you were schooled that you always had to look as if you knew exactly what you were doing. You knew the answer to everything all the time, which is absurd. You wouldn't go to a consultant in something or other and expect them to also solve another problem. Yeah. I mean, but I also think it's in my character, to want to try to always be able to help people, always be able to have the answer. I to coach myself out of that.
Question, Regan, for you. Do you think you have a healthy ego, or do you sometimes feel superior or inferior to others?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, it was definitely unhealthy. And I think that was born of, like a lot of younger, I mean, I'm talking about 20s, early 30s. It was born of insecurity, wanting to prove myself.
Yes.
Now it's healthier. I wouldn't say it's healthy necessarily. I'm more secure in myself. I'm not as afraid of making mistakes.
Yes.
I think I'm of an age now where I can just say, well, yeah, I messed that up. It's okay. I know how to fix it. So a certain amount of that comes with just growing up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And also, I made no secret of it. I've been having counselling years now, and that helps. It's just gives you the ability to be more secure in yourself.
Yes.
Fantastic. When it comes to business, how important has ego been to you in your journey? Has it helped you or has it hindered you, do you think? I know you've mentioned it a few moments ago about perhaps being egged on in different ways, but generally speaking, what sort of impact do you think it's had on your journey?
Yeah. Well, so prepping for this, because you were good enough to give me a clue about what the questions would be. So prepping for this.
Don't reveal the secrets, Regan.
Oh, sorry.
It's like the curtain at Oz, don't reveal what's behind the curtain. This is a completely off the cuff chat. We have not rehearsed.
We'll start again.
To be fair,
I'm joking. Carry on.
I'd just be talking drivel if you hadn't given me the question. I might still be talking drivel, but it's better drivel anyway. I mean, look, prepping for this really, really made me think about. This was one of those questions where I was saying before we started, I had to really have a good think about it. Kind of reflect on what's gone on. So in a positive way, from a healthy ego, I would say, point of view, the decision to start out was, I think, made from a positive point of view. And it was from the point of view of, well, I want this for my lifestyle, I want this for my family, that sort of thing, rather than I want to be the next Elon Musk. So I guess that had an impact. And more recently, as I was saying a moment ago, I think maybe through the work I've done with on myself and all that sort of stuff, I've had the humility to go and seek help and so on. So I think, you know, a healthy ego has helped me with those sorts of things. They're just examples, but yeah, certainly they're good examples for me. When I've had an unhealthy ego, I think, you know, I mean, it really made me think, prepping for this, whether basically that's behind every bad decision I've ever made in business. Because, well, we'll perhaps come on to this a bit later, but things like being flattered into recruiting people who in hindsight were bad, that sort of thing. In hindsight, perhaps I haven't really had a chance to fully think it through, but perhaps I did that because I was egging myself on, you know, trying to, and not really thinking about what was the right thing for me, for the business, and so on.
That's really interesting.
Oh, if I may, so without naming names or identifying anyone in business, what is the worst example of fragile or overinflated ego that you have ever seen? Or I don't know if I'll tag another one on. Or what are the worst examples if you don't want to narrow it down too much?
Yes, we don't want to be identifying anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, the first thing is, right, so the law is full of overinflated egos. So
what?
I mean, I could go on for hours.
Yeah.
But also with clients as well. I mean, I've seen no end of clients get their comeuppance because of those sorts of problems. But I think I would give two examples actually. The first is and they're both firms I used to work for, and I obviously won't name names. The first was a firm that was very, very driven. And they put a lot of trust in their sort of backroom staff and all the rest of it. And they were so focused, the partners, on making money that they forgot to kind of take care of the basics, which resulted in someone stealing an awful lot of, you know, like 5 or 6 million quid from them. And they were making so much money that they didn't even notice. You know,
that's incredible, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, if you talk to the people involved now, I mean, they can barely believe it. But what happened? But they were so driven that they just weren't aware of what was going on around them. So you know, that's the first. The second one was a slightly different example, which was another firm where, again, the partners were very, very driven, and this time it was on expanding the business, and it was expanded. I mean, literally exponentially. It went from sort of 20 people to several hundred people within the space of a year or so. And they then they had a period of consolidation, which just didn't work for them, and they ended up going into liquidation. And I think that was because they were so focused on what they wanted to achieve, both for their status and their incomes, of course, and didn't stop to ask themselves whether it was ever actually viable to sustain it.
So that's sort of wanting to be the best in the business in their field, and that sort of superior ego that we've discussed a few times now sort of seems to come through there. Regan, what are the best and the worst parts about having your own business, would you say?
Yeah, so this is a difficult question to answer because, like, basically everything is both, right?
Yeah, I think yeah, we can probably echo everything you're about to say.
Yeah, so I was, you know, mulling this over. Basically, it depends on how I'm feeling at the time. So, you know, if there's a problem and I'm in a good place, you know, mentally, whether you call that a healthy ego or whatever, feeling positive. You know, and there's a problem, then I enjoy the challenge of solving it. You know, whether that's a problem with the business or a client's problem or indeed a personal problem. I really sort of throw myself into it and enjoy it. If I'm feeling negative, or if I'm feeling insecure, or if at the time my ego is unhealthy, then I hate every moment, and I procrastinate. It's very, 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 very difficult. And I guess if I'm on a just sort of an even keel, maybe somewhere in the middle of those two, I can just trudge through it, and that's fine. It still gets done. So to be more specific, the positives of sort of being my own boss. Talked about that. The hours suit me, the lifestyle suits me, all the rest of it. Any problems that come across, at least they're mine, they're no one else's. But the negatives are that I'm my own boss, and that any problems that come up are mine.
And you made that decision, you know how to fix them as well, and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nicole, before you move on, do you echo, because obviously you run a couple of businesses yourself, do you echo some of what Regan said there?
Listen, I was going take in terms of especially the procrastination, sometimes when something is going horribly wrong and you need to make a decision and you're asking yourself, what do I do? Do I do this? Do I do that? It's difficult. It's difficult. And you sit and sometimes you do nothing. What may be for a short period or a long period of time. So I honestly, I do echo some of what you're saying. So I'm sitting here with my pen going, yeah.
Well, that's reassuring in a way.
Absolutely. And obviously myself as well, running my yoga business and my consultancy now, not my firm anymore. But
if you could just butt in as well and just tag on to that question to you, Steph, even reflect when you're answering that question, reflect back at the end when you were running your own business. Same as
it applies to all of it anyway. But I think what the last thing you said, Regan, about at least the problems are your own problems because you're the boss, but then that's the bad part as well.
Yeah.
Your problems because you're the boss. That is, you sort of don't mind sorting it out if you're in the right mood for it, because you think, well, it's my business and I've created this, so I've got to deal with it. And then on the really bad days where you've had enough or your workload's to the roof, you're thinking, wow, why have I got to do this?
Yeah. Honestly,
all on me.
Yeah, that feeling, and it's horrible. I'm telling you, I've had moments where I just feel like, because like you talk about the place, how you're feeling or mentally, what's going on at the time. It does impact. It does have an impact.
Yeah, definitely. I think I know what Regan's going to say to your next question, and I can't wait to hear.
Well, but before the next question, I mean, I just want to say, I was having last month, I was having a pretty bad time, and two very experienced solicitors, both, well, one in his 60s, one in his 70s, picked up on this. Guys I've worked with over the years, and they really they phoned me and just said, look, I can tell you're not quite yourself. We've been through it, come and meet us, we'll have a beer and we'll talk it through. And we did, and we met in the back room of a bar for like 3 hours, nursed a couple of pints and talked through all the different issues I was having with the business. And I tell you what, every single one of those issues they had come across during the course of the and they were able to say, like, obviously they can't solve them for me, but it was reassuring to know that they'd been through it too, and it was reassuring that they wanted help, and it was, and they had some ideas about how they could solve it, that sort of stuff.
Wow.
Because I know there's
that you had that support out there. Isn't that lovely?
Well, and I think it's probably available to everyone if you just, if you just ask, let it be known. Actually,
and ask.
I know, like you said at the very opening, Regan, that there's a lot of egos in law. It's full of egos, and I guess we get a bad rap, generally speaking, because people think we are fat cat lawyers earning lots of money, which all three of us having done criminal defence works for our entire career. This is sadly not the case. So yeah, so the image of us is obviously one way really portrayed in the media, but obviously, as we know from the Law Society publications and things like that, mental health is rife in law, just like it is in most other areas these days as well. And I think it's sometimes harder for, I guess it depends on the person, but sometimes harder for people in a profession like ours to ask for help, because again, it's the ego thing, isn't it? It's, you know, I've got this role, I'm supposed to advise you on what to do. I can't then be looking weak or damaging my reputation by, you know, holding up my hands and saying, I can't do it anymore. But
yeah, and also you don't want to show. I was about to say you don't want to show weakness, but I don't think it is that. I think
it isn't weakness, but I think sometimes if we're not in the healthy ego state of mind, we perceive it ourselves as weakness, don't we? Whereas really it's actually a real strength to sit back and go, you know, this isn't working, or I'm having some struggles.
Yeah, but you also need your game face on for clients and income.
Yeah.
And it's important, I think, to be able to differentiate between when you need to have your game face on,
yeah,
and when you can actually just go, do you know what, phone so and so, I need a bit of advice here, I need some help, you know. Yeah, and that's so that's something I've had to learn.
Okay, so if you could have your time again, Regan, would you do anything differently in terms of your career?
Yeah, I'd be a train driver.
Okay, I wonder if I could ask why. Is it because you've got your start and end time and there's no stress, or is it because you love trains?
No, I
Curious.
don't particularly love trains, but I do think it's the best view on the train. And all they have to do is, you know, go a bit faster, go a bit slower. And they can't
Oh
get.
my God, you've probably just offended a whole nation of train
No,
drivers. All you have to do is press a button.
No, I know it's a skilled job, but I mean, I always use that as an example of something I would have quite liked to have done. I mean, the answer is probably, in reality, I wouldn't, because I'd still be the same inexperienced idiot making the same mistakes at the time. But I think the biggest thing is that I would try to take a long view. You know, in our profession, probably as in most professions, really, it's you get these daily stresses, you know, and I always think, if it gets to 4 o'clock and I haven't yet had the shitty email of the day, I'm like, well, it's due by, you know, I haven't had one today, so there must be one coming. And then you naturally sort of get stressed about that sort of day-to-day stuff. Whereas if you can take a long-term view, then you realize that actually that day-to-day stuff just, in the end, it just washes over you or goes away, or you solve it, or whatever. So I think I would try to relax and just enjoy it more. I'm not saying I haven't enjoyed it. I have. I've had some good fun. But it's very easy to get sucked into being wound up by other solicitors, by clients, by judges, all the rest of it. And I really, you know, you don't need to be. That's something it took me a very long time to realize.
Are there any habits or hobbies that you practice to try and keep your ego in check, or to try to improve your sense of self-worth so that you're enough?
I've not really thought of it in terms of ego before, you know, but there are things that I do to keep on an even keel all the time when I'm at my best. And if I don't do it, then things start to go wrong, basically. So yeah, I cycle. Every day I go for a walk. Be that, you know, sometimes it's before breakfast, sometimes it's at lunchtime, whatever. I go for a walk. Exercise generally, you know, I try to make sure I exercise in one way or another every single day. Carving out time to relax. very, very easy to just, because you can see that there's work to be done and there's money to be made and all the rest of it all the time. There's always something you could be doing, but it's so easy to burn out. And someone who I won't name said to me recently, there's no point doing an 80-hour week one week and then doing a 0-hour week the next week because you've burnt out. You've just got to keep yourself to a 35, 40-hour week and then be consistent about that. And they were right. So carving out the time to relax, I like to at the end of the working day, spend an hour or so making a nice meal and way to unwind. And it kind of marks the end of the. And the other thing I've been doing, for a good few years is regular counselling sessions. And it just helps to unload on someone who isn't a mate. There's only a certain amount of patience your mates have. So that's kind of that's something I've without becoming a slave to it. That's something I find useful to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What do you do?
Well, at least you've got some good habits there that helps you to unwind and create balance in life. I just wanted to say anyway, thank you for joining us today. Regan, we really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and share with us your life as an entrepreneur and your ego, how you strike that balance. And certainly, we'd love to have you back at a later date to possibly discuss, another topic. I'm sure there's a lot more you could share with us in terms of, work, your life as a professional, as an entrepreneur, or life in the Shetlands.
Absolutely. So thank you, Regan, and thank you to those of you who are watching and listening. We will be back as always in a fortnight's time. In the meantime, please do like, follow, and subscribe to us, I should say. It's the Ego Drop, available wherever you get your podcasts, available on YouTube and all of the socials.
Please also share your stories with us, your comments, your opinions, whatever topics that you'd like for us to talk about, discuss with yourselves. Please do share them, and you can send them to our email address at theegodrop@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye-bye.